start firstly with a question for all of you. In 3 words, how would you describe your career journey so far? We can start with Brenda and then move to Yash and Sam.
Hi, good afternoon, folks. Thanks for having me today. My name is Brenda. Chloe, thank you for your question. So if I use 3 words to describe, I'll say roller coaster, persistence, and contentment.
We can move on to Yash.
Yeah, I'll echo what Brenda said. Thanks again for the warm introduction and thanks for having us. I think for me, the 3 words will be unpredictable, surprising, and then opportunity.
All right, I guess I'll jump in. It's funny, my 3 words are a combination of what's been said. So unpredictable, fun, and persistent.
I think it's really great that like all 3 of you kind of have like the theme going on of like your career just being an unpredictable roller coaster. Yash, you mentioned opportunity. I want to ask a bit more about what you mean by that.
Yeah, I mean, I think every sort of movement or stage of my career so far has just been new opportunities that have come to my table and that I've had to evaluate and understand what are the pros and cons of each option. And so I think for me, like my career just so far has been defined by understanding that there's no one linear path, and it's being open to trying new things and having new opportunities that will lead you to wherever you want to ultimately get to in your career.
And Sam, you also mentioned that one of your words was fun, which is sometimes not really what people think of when they think of careers. So do you want to explain why you said that?
Yeah, I say fun. I mean, initially I was thinking scary, but it's all about your perspective. I say fun because you get to choose. Well, you gotta respond to whatever situation that you're in, but you ultimately have control over where you can end up. And I like to just frame it as fun because similar to Yash said, I mean, there's opportunities everywhere. It's just you have to keep your mind open to it, and it's fun because you don't know where you're gonna land. So
I like that. I like that you said it's all about how you think about it. So my next question is also, all 3 of you work in very different careers. Brenda works with international students at OCAD University. Yash, you're part of RBC's HR strategy team, and Sam, you're an Olympian turned brand marketing manager. Is this where you saw yourself, what you saw yourself doing when you first graduated from university? We can go again with Brenda, Yash, and Sam.
Sure, I'll start. My answer is yes and no. The reason I said no is I have no idea where I would be after 15 years. But working in the educational field has always been my dream and also my goal, especially working in post-secondary. That's why I said yes.
I think on the same topic, I actually was going to say yes and no. I think more no than yes, because again, like similar to the previous answer, like there was opportunities that came my way, but I knew throughout undergrad and throughout as I was preparing for postgrad, I was very confused as to what I wanted to do and what path I wanted to go down, which companies to apply to, and even what roles to take on. But one thing I knew I enjoyed a lot was the element of strategy and consulting and management consulting in whatever capacity that was. But by no means did I expect to end up in something related to HR. I think my background through university was more so in, my degree was in marketing with a minor in economics. I sort of took a variety of different courses throughout university, but none of them ever specialized in HR. And I think, again, one thing led to another, and I've sort of ended up in HR, and it's sort of been a very challenging role, but also an exciting role because it's really easy to empathize with the work you do when you're also ultimately an employee of a company. So yeah, I think mainly yes and no, but definitely no.
cool. Maybe I'll jump in. For me, it was a complete no. I knew what I wanted to do. You know, as an athlete, my goal was like the Olympics, and that's it. And that's not the best attitude to have, because you have to be able to see, okay, what is next. And I was doing my university degree at the same time. So, funny thing, well, actually not so funny. I ended up getting injured terribly. I had hip surgery. So I was faced with, I just graduated and I was like, oh my goodness, Olympics is probably not happening. What do I do next? So for me, I got to this point. It was funny because I had just gotten this hip surgery and I was just lying in my bed. I'd freshly moved to Toronto. And I remember thinking to myself, I need to find something that I'm good at, something that's in demand, and something I'm passionate about. And this was over the course of like, a couple of weeks of just being like, what am I going to do? And the cool thing is, from just using Google and finding, I remember like searching up what can athletes do who have a degree, like tons of different random, just like words through Google. And I came across RBC. They have this RBC Olympians program. They sponsor athletes, but they give them work experience. So that came through. And from that experience, maybe this is something you guys can take. It's having that, what am I good at? What is in demand? And then, what are you passionate about? And really just taking the time to write it out. Because since then, not only had I been sponsored with RBC in terms of just like my training, but now that's like where I work. And I would never have thought I'd work at a bank, I'll be honest. Like, but I'm so glad that I am working here, because now I found my passion is marketing, and it doesn't have to be just running in a straight line as a 100-meter sprinter. So.
Yeah, thanks for all those answers. I think there's like a common theme here, which is that like know what you like to do, but also be flexible to trying new things. So I think that's a good way to think about careers, because I'm graduating soon, and it's also something that I have to think about. So yeah, the next question I want to ask is to Brenda. So Brenda, in your role, you deal with a lot of students, many of whom are away from their family and their friends for the first time. You yourself were an international student who moved away from your home country to study here in Canada. What are some of your tips for transitioning into university life?
Yeah, this question I actually ask a lot when I'm working. So I hope I can give you some tips that it could be useful. It could be maybe something you want to consider. So when talking about tips, I think you should give your time to figure things out. And don't be afraid of voicing out your concerns. I like the first guest speaker says, find someone that you can talk to. That's very important. Once you have the concerns, let people know, and you can always get help. And don't be afraid of making mistakes. And also use different opportunities to expand your network, especially if you're international students. You may not have sufficient support or professional network. So try your best to network with other people and also gain work experience. Make sure you use the resources and support at your school. So for example, at different universities, there's Writing and Learning Center. You can get the tutoring services. There's academic advising. If you have any questions about your academic, go and ask the advisors. They're very nice. And there's career centers. There's International Student Support Office. And also, I highly encourage all students to join different student groups and events. And you can learn a lot of things from other people. Make sure while you're talking to other people, try to improve your communication skills. Sometimes if you can communicate efficiently, you can save a lot of time and energy. And also, please take care of your body and eat smartly, because I know a lot of students at night, if it's too late, they'll be like, oh, I don't want to eat anymore. I want to skip a meal. So please make sure that you always take care of your body, because that's the most important thing. And also, please do what you can to stay safe.
Yeah, and so Brenda, when you graduated from university, what kind of careers were you considering, and did you feel any pressure to pursue a certain career?
I came here about 15 years ago, and I did my master's degree for 2 years. After I graduated, I considered becoming a teacher. But then I realized I had to do another 1-year teacher's college. At that time, it was a 1-year program. Now it's 2-year program. And as you may know, that international student tuition fee is super expensive. And I didn't know if I could have the money to support myself. Then I wanted to become a Mandarin teacher, but the result was not really good. I got an offer, but I realized I got scammed. So at that point, I realized as international students with no North American work experience, no professional network, and like I said, 15 years ago, the supporting system was pretty weak as well. So you need to see what was actually available to you, and then how you can use the resources to support your career goals. So working, like I mentioned before, working in the educational field has always been my goal. So after 10 years of putting effort in it, finally, I'm here where I am, where I want to be. And talking about pressure, I think the pressure is more from myself. I tend to define my value by my achievement. So if I don't do certain work, or if I don't gain certain amount of money, I usually see myself as a loser, which is really bad. Now I understand and I see that as a very bad scope, but at that time I didn't know. So here I want to tell all the participants today, make sure you understand yourself well and make sure you value yourself. Once your confidence level is there, you will definitely achieve where you want to be.
I like that. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
I want to move on to Yash. So Yash went to Wilfrid Laurier School, did a business administration program there. Obviously, it's a very competitive program and it's full of some of Canada's brightest students. So how do you deal with imposter syndrome and feeling like you didn't belong?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a good question. I think I was a bit lucky when I applied and even accepted to go to that school, because it was still, at the time, it was still a growing program. And I mean, and I noticed throughout the 4 years of undergrad there that it was starting to become a bit more renowned throughout Canada and even on the global stage. And so that imposter syndrome even started to creep up a little bit more and more as you go through the program. But and it took a while to figure out how to get through the phase of imposter syndrome, because more often than not, it's an internal battle where you're the one who's sort of placing a lot of these pressures on yourself and sort of these negative beliefs that maybe you don't belong, maybe you aren't meant to be here. But I think what sort of helped me a lot was getting involved with extracurricular activities and competitions and events, and helping plan different things around campus and even off campus, because that's where I met a lot of like-minded individuals, and even some of my best friends to now, who also were going through the same things. They had the same beliefs of, you know what, do I actually belong here? What if I wasn't meant to come here? What if I was meant to just go to another school or another program? But I think as you go through a lot of these different things together, you start to notice that, you know what, you can take a step back and know that you belong. You're not the only one going through it. And it's something that if you rely on each other, you rely on a good network, you're able to get past it and realize that, you know what, you have the value to be there, and you're meant to be there. I think the other thing also kind of helped was establishing a relationship with different professors and counselors on campus. I think sometimes it's a little bit daunting to even go to a professor and say, you know what, I need the help, I need your support and your advice. Ultimately, because they're the ones teaching your classes, they're the ones grading all your work, and sometimes you're a little scared to go to them and talk to them. But I think that's also something that helped me, because at the end of the day, their goal is to teach a class, but they're also there to enable your personal and professional development. And they're actually really happy to help you along the way. Ultimately, if you go to them and you are vulnerable and ask them the questions and show them that you are stuck in a certain area, they will take the time out of their day to ensure that they get you there. So I think it's a combination of developing sort of getting connected with like-minded individuals and building your network that way, but also being vulnerable and asking the right questions and connecting with the professionals who are actually there, who are meant to support you along the way.
Yeah, I think like both you and Brenda, like you talked about how you are your biggest critic. And I think personally, something that I like to do to kind of make myself feel proud about what I've done is I always have like a checklist, and every time I give that checklist like the check, I just feel so good about myself. So I think it's just like learning that to be proud about like every little achievement, no matter like if it's just, you know, I read like 5 pages today. I think it's important to be proud of yourself. And also, I think something about networking now, she said that like everyone is trying to help you. Someone once told me that like when you're thinking, if you're worried about reaching out to someone because you're scared that they're going to say no, think about it the opposite way. If someone came up to you and asked for help, like if someone wanted to learn more about like where you got to where you are now, like it's, you know, like it's something that at least I would do. And I think most other people would do too. So people are very open to helping younger people out, I think. So Yash, I also wanted to ask about any pressures that you felt from your parents or from peers, society in general, when you were pursuing a business degree. And if you felt these pressures, how did you deal with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think mine's an interesting situation. I didn't really have the pressure from my parents to pursue a business degree per se. I mean, I think growing up, you have a bit of the thought that, you know what, there is the pressure from the community or from the culture that you need to go after one of those like top 3 designations, and either an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, one of those like really big ones. But I think what I ended up doing was like I realized really quickly throughout I think my first 2 years of high school that I didn't want to pursue something in science. A combination of me not knowing what that world looked like, but also me just not being good at it. Honestly, I just was not good at anything science related. But I think, and I was a bit resistant at first to start dropping those science courses in the later parts of high school, because I was like, well, what would my parents think? What would others in my community think if I didn't sort of pursue one of these big ones? And I mean, I have an older brother who is an engineer, and so what if I didn't follow a path like him? And so there was a lot of these sort of internal pressures where I felt like I had to live up to a certain bar. But I think what helped was being open and upfront with my parents and actually helping them understand where I wanted to go. And it's a sort of funny story, but there was a time where I was sort of considering doing something in the arts with like photography or designing. And my parents surprisingly were very on board. They were okay with me pursuing something like that, but I ended up taking a step back and realizing that, you know what, I still like the business side of things. I still like the whole design and photography aspect. Maybe a world in marketing seems like what I want to do. And so I think, again, like I was able to show my parents that I was passionate about something and I was dedicated to it. And I think that's ultimately what was okay for my parents to realize that, you know what, yeah, a business degree makes sense for you, and we're on board with that. So I think the advice I was provide is, regardless of what you choose to do, I mean, I know there are sometimes those pressures to go after those big professions, but I think if you're able to show those in your network that, you know what, you're doing this for something that you're passionate about, you have a hobby for, you're really good at it, and you know internally that you can do well at this, then I think that's what matters the most. And you being able to show that to others, that this is the path I have for myself, these are the goals I've set, I think ultimately you'll end up doing well in what you want to do, and it doesn't matter if it isn't one of those top 3 designations.
Yeah, I also like how you said that you knew what you didn't like to do, because I think sometimes when it comes to building your career path, it's just like there's so many options that sometimes it's even easier to go the opposite way and say, this is what I don't want to do. Like, I hate math. I don't want to be an accountant or whatever. I think that's also something that was a process that I had too, because I knew that I really liked writing. And so I think that's what led me to pursuing global affairs degree, which does involve a lot of reading, writing, analysis, and that sort of thing. And I knew I didn't like science, so. All right, I want to move on to Sam. So Sam, I'm sure your parents also had a lot to say about your career decisions. How did they react when you told them that you wanted to pursue a career in sports?
It's a good memory. I remember just being like, I was obviously younger, and my family, to give you a bit of context, so my family's from West Africa, from Ghana, and you know, they immigrated here, they came here, they became citizens, and then they had myself. I have 3 older brothers and younger sisters. So the thing is, you know, when you do come from a background like that, and you have parents who have sacrificed everything to kind of give you a better life, when I told them I want to be a sprinter, they're like, but how are you going to pay the bills? You know, again, it's in the very literal sense. If you think about it, I remember my dad would be like, "Why do you," in his accent, "Why do you want to run in a straight line?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." When you look at it like that, um, but it was hard. You know, they had the mindset similar to, I think Yash had mentioned it briefly, like the doctor, lawyer, engineer. It's like you have, the world is your oyster. You can do anything in Canada. But where that changed, like I had told them I wanted to do this track thing. Um, I had one day come home after, a hard training session, and
Oh, Sam, I think we lost you
it's
for a
just like
bit.
after
Oh,
school, and I had two, I believe it was like Serbia or something like that. I qualified for the. Oh, you able to hear me now? Now, good now.
yeah, sorry.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll get right to the point. So they gave me I came home. I had a ticket. It was a plane ticket to Serbia in Europe, and it was for the World University Games. I qualified. They sent me the ticket, and I showed my dad. I was like, "Look, I'm going to Serbia." He's like, "How did you pay for that?" And I told him that because of my accomplishments on the track, like this is very early on, they decided to take a chance on me and send me there. And he still didn't buy it. I still said I wanted to be an athlete, but then I did mention to him that there are scholarships. And when you've lived that student loan life, having the ability to get scholarships, to get your school paid for was like the key. And from that point on, they were like, okay, we're on board for this. But it was tough. I was working, at a deli. I remember in my like second year university making like $8 an hour. I don't want to age myself too far. I know minimum wage is higher now. But anyway, I was working at a deli, and I was trying to run track, and so to bring that to my parents that I want to be an athlete was tough. But since then, sport actually opened my eyes up to marketing, marketing athletes, and I did my Bachelor of Commerce at the University of Calgary, and then last year I did a master's at Queen's. So funny enough, I now go to my parents and say, "See, because I did this sport, now it opened my eyes to the many opportunities." But it was something I had to show them. And maybe anybody on the line here, maybe your parents are not as passionate about whatever you want to, do. Maybe it's in the arts, maybe it's a business designation that they're not passionate about. Maybe just show them the steps and the potential. And I think that's the difference. And that's what can make you future ready. So that's basically what I did with sports.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times parents are also just concerned about their children's well-being, and they're like, I don't want you to like starve, right? And I think so, yeah, as you said, like, it's important to like do your research, sit your parents down, be like, look, I can live off of this. Here's what other people do, here's what I can do. Yeah, great advice. Um, yeah, and so eventually you pivoted from sports to working at RBC. Was this a difficult transition for you?
You know what? It wasn't as difficult as when I look back, it was somewhat seamless because a lot of amateur athletes, so athletes who are in Olympic sports, it's tough. You retire from sport, then all of a sudden it's like a deer in the headlights feeling, like where do I go next? For me, I was lucky to be sponsored by the bank. They have this program. They basically RBC as a whole, they have athletes who are ambassadors, and we spread messages of like inspiration, hope. We got to tell our stories, but they also have a piece of this program where you can get work experience. So I actually did a rotation. I worked in corporate citizenship, actually with Vishan, who is on the line here. I worked in communications. I worked in brand marketing where I'm at now. So I got a bit of a taste of what it's like to just be outside of sport. And the transition wasn't too tough. But I'll be honest, like I'm freshly, I'm like 7 months into this full-time role. And I think changing, you know, my day-to-day of running on the track and having a very different schedule to being like, okay, now I'm focused on this project, and having a different schedule. That has been tough, but I have a lot of amazing support, and having a transitional program, it makes it easier. So if you have the opportunity to do an internship, if you have the opportunity to do a co-op, if you have an opportunity to even do a job shadow, these are all such key things that will help it be easier for you to transition. And I've seen that firsthand right now.
I think having that sort of work experience is also very important for a lot of employers now. Yeah, and I guess throughout your career, you've also held a lot of leadership positions. What's the most important lesson that you've learned about leadership?
Whew, that's a big question. I would say the biggest thing that I've learned, most important lesson is like, and this may seem very cliche, but lead by example. It's easy to sit here and tell people, what to do, but when people see you there, you're in the trenches with the people that you're leading through. That's my definition of leadership. When I was in university, I was the captain of our track team, and I made sure to be the first one at training, like half an hour before, and I would leave a half an hour after. So then if I did, have some things to say, I want to pump up the team, it's like it comes from a genuine place. So that's super key. And now when I do look to leaders that I have within the bank, like even like a Vishan, I see how hard he works. I see how passionate about the community, he is. And, it's just something I want to emulate. So it's just that leading by example is so key. And it's about being in the trenches with whoever you're working with, and showing them that you're no different, but you're in this with them. And I think that's key, because if you want to get to higher levels and you want to be that leader, you have to show people.
Thanks, Sam. Before we start our Q&A session, I just want to ask the three panelists a bit more about career development. So again, we'll do same order as before, Brenda, Yash, and then Sam. So what are some important tips for landing your first job?
I guess for me, I can share some job searching tips. So if you are currently a university student, like I mentioned before, go to your career center. There are tons of job opportunities. It's specifically for current students and alumni. And also talk to the career advisors. They can help you polish your cover letter, resume. They can help you improve your interview skills. And make sure you use a lot of job search websites like Glassdoor, LinkedIn to build up your professional network. And also from Glassdoor, you're able to see the salary range. You're able to see the real interview questions. That's a great way for you to prepare for your interviews. And also right now, like all the settlement agencies, they have employment services like TCCSA. They have the employment programs. Make use of that. So try your best to collect all the resources and try your best to build your network.
Okay. No, I can jump in, and I think maybe I'll talk a little bit about what I was saying earlier around like taking risks, like stepping out of your comfort zone. And I think the biggest advice I can provide is using, whether you're in high school, university, even post grad, using as a chance to try new things and taking risks. I think what I've learned is like you have very little to lose, right? I think, or especially early on in your career where you may not have as many dependencies or restrictions, and you have almost, let's say, a 30, 40, 50-year career ahead of you. You have so many chances to try new things. And it sounds like a cliche, but failing fast and learning even faster is a great way to set yourself up for success, and also stepping out of your comfort zone. I think, again, like I mentioned with the imposter syndrome, more often than not, you're the one holding yourself back as opposed to anything else. And so taking that risk almost always leads to you landing in an opportunity that may be even better for your career, and putting you in a spot that will supercharge you even further than you would be if you were sort of following a traditional track that was set up for you by someone else. I think the other thing is like it's almost like something that others will also appreciate, right? If you're able to say that, you know what, I'm open to opportunities, I'm open to trying new things, that will always open you up to a network of other individuals that you never knew that you would be able to meet before. Maybe it also sets you up for meeting new sort of coworkers that you never thought you'd be working with before. One thing I'll mention is, like, at least for me throughout my short career at the bank so far, I've seen that leaders appreciate when you're able to move around a different part of the bank and taking a risk and trying something new, because they know that you're building up a well-rounded set of skills and you're building your toolkit that will be more beneficial for you than just sort of following a traditional path. And I mean, it also helps to put it into perspective that, especially when you come out of school and you start a job, for the most part, your career is going to be lasting for north of 30, 40 years, right? That's, if you put that into perspective, that's a lot of time. And so why not take that opportunity to try so many different things in those 30, 40 years and have many different careers, as opposed to just one that you will be sort of following a cookie cutter pathway for. And I ultimately think that if you're able to try different things and fail and ultimately land into what you're more passionate about, you'll actually end up driving more value, not only for yourself, but others in an area where you know you've put 150% of your effort and passion into, as opposed to something that maybe you don't enjoy on a day-to-day basis and you sort of quote unquote hate work, right? And so I think those are some of the things I'll mention around taking the opportunity and the risks.
Yeah, if I can just step in for your answer, Sam. Yeah, I think also I was having a coffee chat recently. Also, coffee chats very helpful just to like get a better understanding of what careers look like, because a lot of the times like what we see, you know, in the media like isn't always like what a job actually is. So again, it's really useful to talk to people about their experience in jobs. But I was talking to someone during a coffee chat and they were saying, yeah, in the government, right? The government actually likes hiring people with different experience, like experience in the private sector, especially because it's just they have that experience and they know how to think differently. And alternatively, I think a lot of private sector companies also like to hire people who have experience working in the government because they have that experience dealing with policymakers, for example. So I think like a lot of the times when we grow up, we're taught to think, choose something, stick with that. But like, I think that's like, you don't have to do that at all. And in fact, a lot of employers do look for diversity in your experience. So again, you have like 30, 40 years, take risks and just try whatever you want. And sorry, Sam, go ahead.
No worries. I mean, that's along the lines of what I was thinking too. And especially what Brenda had mentioned on, you know, the career center. I swear these things are in universities and a lot of students just walk right by them. I'm like, take the opportunity, trust me. And then especially what Yash had said and just what you had said, all on point. You have to try, and it's okay if you fail, but at least you know what you don't like, you can keep going. But I would say, you know, in my personal experience, mentorship and sponsorship have been so important. When I say mentorship, I mean like, you know, finding somebody who can give you advice, kind of show you the ropes, somebody who's more experienced that can take you through what was, you know, helpful for them, but also, you know, push you away from some of the things that made them struggle. I mean, those are key. Sponsorship, when I mentioned that, that's more of just like somebody who will elevate your visibility. So this can be, if you do have your job at work, somebody who's gonna like spotlight you, somebody at school who could spotlight you. This person will look, you know, and keep their eyes open for if there's a new role available. So those two things have been so incredibly key. And then the last point I'll just quickly jump onto is just because I'm in marketing too, but taking control of your brand. And I think nowadays we often look at brand as like, okay, am I big on social media? But it's more than that. It's, you know, brand is who you are. It's what you say. It's what you do. It's your values. You know, if you're into social impact, that's who you are. That's your, you know, traveling. If you're into finance, sociology, whatever it is, figure out what that is. You know, a brand is what you say. So physically, so if you're, you know, at a networking event, remember like what you say has impact. It's what you stand for. And then lastly, like it's what you do. Are you a student? Are you in the beginning of your career? Are you an athlete like myself? You know, these are really key things that I would really push you to look at. And then similar to actually what Brenda had said, you know, make sure, you know, you go to that career center, figure out how you can jump onto something like LinkedIn, or even I did mention Instagram before. You know, after this event, add us on LinkedIn, add us on, you know, Instagram, add us on Twitter, like keep the conversation going. Remember that it doesn't have to be just networking, but it can be just connecting, making friends, because you may not need us right now, but who knows? You may be graduating next year, the year after, and this is a quick message to us in terms of like maybe wanting to connect to somebody. So that's kind of my 2 cents of things that have really helped me. But I said it there. I'll put it out there. Feel free to reach out. I like to connect with individuals, and we got to keep this conversation going. So